Well, welcome everyone to our 2021 market forecast. For those of you that are in real estate or who have been keeping up with all of 2020, we know we had a crazy year. So we want to talk, just really go into what really happened in the 2020 market and then forecasting on to the future of 2021. I am Kallie Ritchey. I am the broker over at Ritchey Realty. Been in business for about almost 11 years now, and started when the market was not so good. Then we saw it shift, and we've continued to see it shifting and shifting every year. So it's been an exciting 11 years on my end. We also have here Matt. I'm going to butcher the last name.
Let's hear it.
Viokas? What?
Viokas, that's right.
Viokas. Okay. Matt Viokas is over at Guaranteed Rate. Matt, do you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a branch manager and a loan officer by trade. I've been in the business for 16 years now. So just, really enjoy the industry and enjoy helping people get into home ownership.
Awesome. Well, thanks
Yeah,
again for joining us on this
my pleasure.
and help putting this on. But let's get started. We're going to talk a little bit today about the past, the present, and the future as we start to dive into forecasting what's happening in 2021. So one of the things, and I pulled this quote from Mark Fleming, and this came back out in March when COVID just started. And he is the chief economist over at First American. He says, many still bear the scars from the Great Recession and may expect the housing market to follow a similar trajectory in response to the coronavirus outbreak. There are distinct differences that indicate the housing market may follow a much different path. While housing led the recession in 2008, 2009, this time it may be poised to bring us out of it. So I bring this slide up because I know when we first came out with the shutdowns, people were concerned about what is going to happen with us going into a recession, which we can't deny that happened. But is it going to have an impact on the housing market? It did have an impact on the housing market, but not in the way that some people were concerned. So this slide here is showing you the last 6 recessions that we've had. And these are home values that occurred during those 6 recessions. As you can see, 4 of the recessions that we've had did not result into a drop in home values. Out of the 4 recessions, they stayed up. We had 2 recessions that did go down in house prices, the one in 1991, but just a slight decrease, a 3% drop in home value. And then the big one of 2008, which was a significant drop in home values. We were impacted by foreclosures, short sales. That was a huge market back in 2008 going into 2010. So the big difference, though, with the housing market in 2008, the recession was caused by the housing market. If you guys can remember that, if you just had a name on a piece of paper, you might have been given a loan back during those days.
Oh yeah. Back to the stated income, stated asset program.
If you could find a social security number, they just maybe you didn't even have one. But loans were just being given out, balloon loans, and just people got into a lot of trouble with that. So the recession that we had back in 2008 was pretty much caused by what was happening in the housing market. That has been fixed. We don't do that anymore. So that's why we're not seeing that go around this time. Now, this slide here is looking at what about the showing activity. So this was pulled from our showing time, which is how we track who is showing homes, how many times homes get showed. And this is a year over to year change. This is for the whole US, as you can see, the Northwest, Southwest, all those different areas of the US that we can see pretty much everyone has a similar line. And we can see the drop back here in March. And that is because when we got shut down, people were not able to easily get out and look at homes. People were concerned. So we had a huge drop in the showing activity. But guys, if you can see here, when we started to shoot right back up, if we look from August of 2019 through August of 2020, we can see a huge increase in the amount of traffic of showing homes, and that has still continued year over year to stay in that situation. Matt, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about mortgage rates. Tell us what happened with mortgage rates in 2020.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you're looking at this graph, if you look at, to the far left, the beginning of the year, in general, rates started coming down a little bit with talks of COVID, being out there in the world and coming to the U.S. But as COVID hit the U.S., the fear of the economic disasters did come into play, and investors started moving money out of the stock market and putting it into the safe havens of the bonds. And when you do that, that causes interest rates to go down. And then as you go a little bit further along here, when you get into, you see that spike from between March and April. That is a time frame when we started hearing talks about that initial stimulus package that was coming out, and as that money was coming out, we started seeing consumer confidence come back a little bit. We've got that injection of money going into the economy. And so that actually started causing rates to go up just a little bit. But then, of course, you get the government getting involved back with manipulating rates, so to speak, to where they started investing heavily into buying bonds, which helps drive down the rates. So as we're going through the year here, you can just see that constant purchasing of bonds through the Treasury was causing rates to come down. And we really hit some fantastic interest rates this year, and there's been a lot of people that have been able to take advantage of them.
Mm-hmm. And what about the mortgage applications? What have we seen?
Sure. Yeah. So on this graph, you've got that white line, which represents 0%. So for the most part of this year, we've been above year over year purchase applications. Obviously, once again, during the shelter in place piece of March through May, you're seeing a reduction in purchase applications. But as a lender, we saw a massive influx of refinance applications. So on my side, things are continuing to go well. But then as you get into springtime, when things lightened up a little bit, you can see the applications going up quite a bit. Really at one point in September this year, we were 40% over year, and then consistently stayed around 20% for the remainder of the year.
So I think this is kind of coincides with the amount of activity that we just looked at, of showing activity. People are still wanting to get out and look at homes, and there's a reason for that. We'll discuss that here in a second.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'll let you talk a little bit about this as well.
Right. So most consumers, when they hear that the Fed has lowered the Fed fund rate to zero, they correlate that with mortgage interest rates. Now, the Fed fund rate does affect credit card rates, auto loans, home equity lines of credits, interest rates of that nature, but actual mortgage rates, it does not. So just because the Fed fund rate goes to zero does not mean mortgage rates are going to zero. And this graph represents that very accurately, where if you see the red line is the Fed fund rate over time. We're talking, I want to say this graph is over 30, 40 years. And as you can see it going up and down, the blue line, which is mortgage rates, does not always follow with it. So, there's certain spots to where the Fed raised rates, but mortgage rates went down. So don't use that as an indicator of where mortgage rates are. Mortgage-backed securities and bonds is what's going to dictate where mortgage rates go. And talking to your lender is the best way to find out, accurate rates.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And here in this slide here, I thought was interesting too. It's just another example of how once the debt increase, well, I'll let you kind of explain this. You're probably better at that than I am.
Sure. So when the debt of this country increases, interest rates typically decline. So, with these stimulus packages, you may see a short-term rise in rates with these stimulus packages. That does help drive our economy, but it's for the short term. So, as that's happening, you hear all the time that the government will just print more and more money to make up for it. But that's not accurate. That would actually devalue the dollar and cause additional inflation. So the government takes on debt with these stimulus packages, I mean, we've had, trillions of dollars going out this year with these stimulus packages, and that is additional debt that the country is incurring. So what that does is, in the long run, that actually slows down the economy, and by doing that, ultimately will give us lower rates, because if the economy is slowing down, we're going to see interest rates lower to inject that stimulation again of the economy going and people making purchases.
Great, great. So we've talked a little bit, but we're still kind of recapping the 2020. We're talking about the interest rates, what was happening with them. Let's just take a little bit of a snapshot here. This box here, or this chart here, is going to show, of course, we talked about showings that had increased. We talked about the purchase applications that increased year over year. The pending and existing home sales, the new home sales. Now, what you're seeing on the two reds is what we're talking about, inventory. And for those that have been out in the market trying to buy a house this in 2020, have probably felt that we've had a lack of inventory. The real estate industry, all the agents are, have been struggling to find inventory for clients. So we can see a huge drop of the existing home inventory at almost 40%. And the new home, which is our new construction inventory, has also been down as well throughout 2020. And as this chart's showing, just a huge decrease in the amount of inventory. Now, this is more of a global look from what we're at. But I can tell you that the 3.5 million people that are moving to Texas. But Matt, you had spoken, if we just want to go even more local to just Tarrant County, we have how many people moving in? Can you give us a snapshot of that?
Well, yeah. So I did a little research with the Census Bureau, and essentially, you've got 300 plus people a day moving into the DFW area. I don't know specifically for Tarrant County, but I mean, Tarrant County is a big chunk of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, so that is a lot of people moving into our area on a daily basis, and they need somewhere to live, and they want to buy houses as well. So when you get a combination of those, the vacancies in our area, so the vacancies are near record lows as well. So the less empty homes we have, you know, the sellers are not willing to lower their price because there's no competition out there. So they can keep the prices high, which keep our values high and continue to rise.
And with all these people, new residents a day, uh, most of them are either moving to the Dallas Fort Worth area or to Austin, so from other states. And so that's why we're seeing just such a huge, over 2020, we've continued to see that lack of inventory. Another reason why we've had a lack of inventory also is because new construction got put kind of on a halt there for a while when we were shut down. People were not able to get out and build like they normally did. So not only do we have, this huge demand of people moving in, but also just we're not able to keep up with all the demand, even with the new construction and pre-existing homes, which of course, everybody knows the law of supply and demand. It makes prices increase. It just pushes pressure on those prices. This is exactly the Tarrant County inventory. If we just take a look, as we're talking about just getting more local as opposed to being so global on the Tarrant County inventory, you can see here back in December of 2019, which is this first bar, we were a little bit over 3 months supply of inventory. Now, you can just see how it kind of just really took a trickle down. And as we ended the year in 2020, in December 2020, we're under two months supply of inventory, probably about 1.8 months supply of inventory. Now that's a pretty significant drop. Continuously every year I've seen us be somewhere around the 3 mark of inventory, but for us to be under 2 months supply is pretty significant. Now, let me talk a little bit about what that means. When we're talking month supply of inventory, it kind of shows us, are we in a buyer's market? Are we in a seller's market? Or are we just in a neutral market? When we see inventory at somewhere between 0 to 6 months supply of inventory, we're in a seller's market. We don't get into a balanced market until we're a little bit above 6 to 7 month supply of inventory, and then around 7, 8 month supply where we start to transition into a buyer's market. So us being under 2 month supply puts us in a strong seller's market, and it's might take a little bit of time before we see those things change on us. This is the US, just a more global showing of, oops, sorry, let me get back to that slide there. A more global look at what's happening with the, let's keep going to the wrong thing. Let's talk a little bit about the sales price. That's where we're going on this graph here. So this is more of a global look at what has happened with sales prices over 2020. But going to just a more of back to Tarrant County, because I know that's where most of us are here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. When we look at the median sales price starting in, again, December of 2000, as we ended the year in 2019, the median sales price was about $213,000 for Tarrant County. As we ended the year in 2020 in December, you can see we shot up to about $240,000. That is about a almost 13% appreciation rate on a gain, which is really incredible. And I know some areas, I wanted to show you more of Tarrant County than just the global, because global is probably showing you somewhere around a 7%, whereas we, because of the demand here and the shortage of supply that we have in the metro Tex area, we're seeing a much greater rate of appreciation than we're seeing in the more global areas. So as we kind of wrap up a little bit of 2020, because I know we're all eager to see where we're going to, here's one thing that I saw that popped up. A year from now, you'll wish you had started today. And so that's what we want to talk about, a little bit of today as we move forward. Wrapping up the 2020, we saw a shortage of inventory. We saw an increase of sales over, despite the pandemic, we had more sales in 2020 than we did in 2019, and still a great deal of appreciation. So looking ahead, I want to start with this quote here from Jed Kolko. He says, above all, the 2021 outlook hinges on the course of the coronavirus. Both the recent virus surge and the election make government emergency reliefs more likely. So this was actually done before we had the government reliefs towards the end of last year. Next year, which would be this year, will also start to show whether two of the big pandemic shifts will endure, from services to goods and from in-office to remote work. Even small shifts, and this is what I want to kind of look at, even small shifts in these trends, if permanent, could cause big changes in how businesses hire, how job seekers search, where people live, and how much they earn. So what I think is interesting or should be noted with this is that we know 2021, we just started out with the vaccines, and we know that there's more jobs that are coming available. But I think whatever happens long term with COVID could impact us this year on our housing market. This here from Danielle Hell. He's the chief economist over at Realtor.com, says that we expect, now we're talking here about the number of sales. We expect home sales in 2021 to come in 7% above 2020 levels, following a more normal seasonal trend and building momentum through the spring and sustaining the pace in the second half of the year. While some home sales are expected to lose some momentum over the last months of 2020, the shallower than normal seasonal slowdown creates a higher base of activity leading into 2021 that is roughly maintained for the first half of the year. And here's where he talks about vaccines and everything again. As vaccines for the coronavirus become broadly available to the public, and the economic growth reflects the resumption of more normal patterns of consumer spending, home sales gain even more in the second half of the year. So the second half of the year, as we come into, we're already looking at what's expected 7% more sales than we had in 2020. So that's going to be a pretty big number. Why are we seeing more sales? that are going to come, and why is it that they're expecting more sales towards the end of the year? One of those is going to be, as we just discussed, that people are, have been waiting. In 2020 they were concerned about where they're going to move or what they need to do, so they've kind of been holding out until 2021. We've got the vaccines that are coming out, and perhaps towards the end or towards the second half of the year, as more people get vaccinated, they're going to want to come out and start buying homes. Interest rates are going to be another huge factor that's pushing the number of sales that we're going to have. Also, as people become more employed, they're going to have the means to go out and start looking for homes. But this slide here, Matt, if you can kind of, you brought this up and I thought it was really interesting, especially for those of you that are in the real estate business, something really I found to be very interesting. So Matt, take over from here.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a statistic that in the past I never thought of as well, and when it was first presented to me, obviously it makes logical sense, but it's just something that we don't think about. So there'll definitely be a continued demand for housing, and one of the ways to monitor that is by birth rate. So the median age of the first-time home buyer is 33 years old. And 33 years ago, there was an explosion of births. As you look at this graph, you can see that this is the second highest wave of births since the baby boomer generation. Baby boomers were at 76 million, millennials are at 66 million. So you can also see moving forward that the amount of births stay almost equally as high through 2012. Giving us a steady amount of first-time home buyers for years to come. So even past the millennial stage, post-millennials, still 61 million births. So it's not far off, but yeah, all those 33-year-olds are ready to buy right now. So, a combination of that, the added population to our area and the lack of inventory is just going to continue to drive values higher and continue with this appreciation.
Right. So taking a look then also, what's going to happen, Matt, with mortgage rates?
Well, if I had that crystal ball, Kallie. No. So it's all about statistics and just monitoring systems. But as you can see on this graph, this is just an average. This is a national average. So you got to be careful when you're looking at national averages, because they may not be exact to our area, but they're going to be close, give you a general idea. And as you see in 2020 here, there was that large decrease in rates, but then in 2021, we should see a pretty nice steadiness of low interest rates. We've been extremely spoiled with these 2% that we've been hearing everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Occasionally with a small buy down, you could have at one point even get into the 1%, but we should hold into that low 3%. Through most of 2021, unless there's some significant changes in our economy.
And even it's interesting because I remember when about 2000, I want to say somewhere around 2012 hit, and we started to see interest rates go down to that low 3%.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to go from memory. I don't remember if they ever went below 3%, though. I don't know if
we may have had some in the high twos at that point. I would have to go back and check myself, but they definitely hit record lows this time around.
The one thing though that I can say for our consumers is that when the rate started going up and pushing up closer to 4%, and I purchased a home back in 2000, I think 2017, 2018, somewhere around then, and the rates were about 4.25%. And when we started, it was interesting because when we started going up to about 4%, people started not wanting to buy because they thought the rates were too high. But if we look historically,
right, that's crazy.
Even 4%, I remember when I bought my first house, I think the interest rates were about 6.5%. So even 4%. So if we're still hovering in 2021 over the 3%, somewhere in the 3%, that's still not a bad rate.
Yeah, that's an amazing rate. The 30-year average mortgage rate is 6%.
Uh-huh.
So we're half of that right now.
Yeah. All right. What do you got? What do we have here, Matt?
Yeah, so this is just a little bit more information on, rates, should remain low, based on, the inflation pressure lowered by the debt that we've been talking about in technology. The labor force, we've got a lot of unemployment out there as well. Labor force is down 10 million. Hopefully at some point here, it will come back. And then with the new administration, the blue wave coming in, they will increase the supply of treasury purchases, which, will help keep rates low as well. And then, I would say, rates will likely bump higher before resuming that downtrend due to the country's debt. We talked about that a little bit earlier as well. When you get those stimulus packages and the changing of the guard, so to speak, within our government, you tend to see some increases in rates. But overall, we feel like they'll stay low for some time.
Good deal. Good deal. All right, so let's go on. Let's talk a little bit of projections about home values. Again, this is more of a global, not a global, but more of the U.S. wide prediction on home values. And you can see we've got them from NAR, which is the National Association of Realtors, Realtor.com, CoreLogic, Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, and the MBA, who all have different opinions of what's going to happen with home values in 2021. The good thing is that across the board, we're seeing that values are going to continue to appreciate. We do see it's on here, we're looking at somewhere between 6 and 2 across the 6 to 2%. If we just shoot right in the middle, we're probably about 4%, and that's US wise. Now, when we talk about home values here, though, in the Metroplex, as we mentioned before, we are superseding what is the US average of home prices. So if we're saying that, hey, last year we saw appreciation around 13%, then you can only imagine what's going to happen with us. I'm going to forecast, and I don't know if I can put myself on the line for this one.
We are recording this, Kallie, so be careful.
I guess when we do the next forecast for 2022,
we can edit it later.
Yeah. So, but I'm projecting that we're going to be somewhere north of that 6%. I think if we even if we go to about half of what we did in 2020, which is going to be somewhere around that between 6 and 7%. I still think we're going to be north of what the average is across the board.
Yeah,
so,
agreed.
You agree?
Absolutely.
So, that's really great news for those of that are homeowners, or if you're looking to purchase a home here pretty soon, you can expect to see these appreciations over the course of 2021. Now, let's talk about some good news here for our buyers too, not just for our homeowners or people selling their home. I want to talk a little bit. I want to start with this quote from Realtor.com. For our buyers, the bright spot for buyers is that more homes are likely to become available in the last 6 months of 2021. That should give folks more options to choose from and take away some of that sense of urgency. With a larger selection, buyers may not be forced to make a decision in mere hours and will have more time to make up their minds, which I know is, it seems like right now, if you find a house, you've got to pull the trigger on it right then and there, and there's multiple offers and you're competing. So it's good news to see that we have more inventory coming on the market towards the second half of the year. Now, why is that? Where is the inventory coming from? A couple of things, and we mentioned this very briefly here a bit ago, new construction. We can see here where this red circle is. Over the course of last year, it significantly dropped, and that was back in March during shutdowns. And so new construction, we have seen a huge increase and push for permits, for building and contracts in new construction. So they're slowly going to be they're still catching up with what was lost back in 2020. So I think towards the second half, we're going to see them having more inventory of homes on new construction. Here we got one of the things that was said by Mark Fleming: despite the best intentions of home builders to provide more housing supplies, the big short that we've had in the housing supplies will continue into 2021 and likely push the prices appreciation flying high. So not only do we have the inventory of homes that we have coming on the market, not only are we going to get that from new construction, but we're also going to, again, I mentioned people that were kind of holding out in 2020 to see what happens. We're going to see them start coming out of 2020 ready to make that move. We also are going to, so those that are ready to sell their house and move on, which I want to say real quick too, we're also seeing a huge flux of home sales because those persons finding that they need more space in their home, more office space, more outside entertainment stuff, or they're wanting to move. We're also seeing a rise and move into the suburbs and into more rural places and out of the city as people start working from home more often. So we're going to see all those people coming, not all of them, but a good portion of people that were pent up and held up in 2020 and didn't want to make that move. Maybe they were uncertain about their jobs. And so now that they've got those certainties, we're going to see them getting ready to put their home on the market and make that move. So we're going to have a variety of different homes that we're going to see inventory hit. So that's a good thing for us to have more inventory. One other thing, and we're going to talk about this in a minute here, we are going to, unfortunately, and I just have to mention this, and I wish it wasn't the case, but we're going to talk here in a bit about forbearances and whether or not we're going to see an incline of short sales or foreclosures. One thing I do want to say where some more inventory is going to come from is because unfortunately those that were in forbearance or that are not able to remain in their home and are having to liquidate their asset, be it their home, we're also going to see some more of those unfortunately hit the market. But is it going to be a short seller foreclosure? We're going to talk a little bit about that here in a minute. Just know we're going to have some people that are going to unfortunately have to liquidate their property. So now I did say that, hey, we're going to have more inventory for our buyers coming here in the second half of the year, which is great news. But it's there might be some repercussions to waiting so long. So Matt, I'm going to turn the table for you to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so definitely, we should see additional inventory towards the end of the year, but it's going to come at a price. So what I did here was I did a cost of waiting analyzation here, and on this page, what I did was I kept the interest rate the same in all three scenarios, just so we can compare strictly appreciation of the property and what it would cost you additionally. So in column one is, today, the property value is 300,000. I picked 10% down as kind of like the medium of down payments out there. And then the interest rate of 2.875, which, is a current market rate, someone that's 700-ish credit score. And if we use the appreciation value of 7%, if you wait 6 months, home should appreciate about 3.5%, causing that property now to cost you $310,500. And then if you wait a full year and we see 7% appreciation, that same $300,000 home is now going to cost you $321,000. So a nice jump there. And I did a little bit of research on some historical data in Tarrant County, and I used my own personal home as an example, and the appreciation was actually higher than 7% year over year. So if we continue on that trend, this $300,000 home could cost even more money. And then as you look at the bottom portion, basically, so by waiting 6 months, using the same interest rate, your monthly payment is going to go up $89 per month using those same comparison scenarios. And then if you wait a full year, you're looking at your payment going almost $200 a month at $183. And what you really got to think about here, which most people don't, we're just comparing what your payment increase is doing, but you also have to take into consideration how much more interest you're paying on that higher amount. So the actual cost is going to be higher than what you're seeing here if you truly compare how much interest per payment you're paying. And then right below that, you have a combination of the appreciation that has been gained and what you're going to lose out on if you waited a year. So, for example, on waiting 6 months, you're going to lose $10,500 in appreciation, and then the amortization loss right below that of $2,857. That is the additional interest you're paying in that time, or in that year, because of the higher payments. And then, of course, if you wait 1 year, that cost goes up even more.
Mhm. So, if for our buyers if you're thinking about buying a home this year in 2021, maybe this is your first time home buyer, or you've been holding out wanting to make that downsize or upsize from where you're at right now, it might be best to go ahead and start getting with your lender or with Matt, who can definitely help you out and start planning for what to do, because as we can see, it's even just that slight increase. Once we combine the increase of a slight increase of appreciation and mixed in with the interest rates, then it becomes a little bit more of a cost. So,
Exactly. And I would say, just don't assume that it can't happen or it won't happen.
mhm,
Let us take a look at it. Let us do a full review of your financial situation. There you can put less money down than 10%. There's programs where you can do 100% financing,
mhm,
or minimum of 3% financing. And then there's down payment assistant programs, grant programs, gift funds from family members. So there's all different ways you can get into a home today, and use that as a stepping stone to build you up to that next home, or the true dream home.
yes, yes.
And then this slide, this is a similar demonstration. So we're still using the same property value increases, but the difference here now is we're showing the interest rates just going up a little bit throughout the year. Like we talked about, we feel like rates are still going to stay low throughout the year, but as the vaccinations come into play, consumer confidence comes back, jobs come back, rates will start to go up a little bit. These trillions of dollars that we're spending on stimulus packages, they got to get paid back at some point, and the Fed's going to raise their rates on other interest rates, and bonds and treasuries are going to do the same thing. So in this scenario, I used, I would say pretty conservative, only going up 0.25% in interest rate. If you wait 6 months, would, bring your rate from 2.875 to 3.125, causing your monthly payment to go up $127 a month compared to the 89 we showed you on the last
Mhm.
slide. And then, if you wait a full year, if rates went up even another quarter from there, we're now at 3.375. Now you're talking about a payment of going up $262 a month. So that is
Mhm.
quite a big jump. And once again, we're not taking into consideration the amount of interest you're paying within that payment as well. So it's actually costing you more than what you're seeing on here. And this is just over 1 year.
Mhm.
Most clients are doing 30-year amortization loans, and that's when it's really going to start to add up.
So that would be a nice little chunk that you could add back into your retirement account, reinvest it in a different way. Yes.
Absolutely. You're definitely going to make more on financial investments with higher rates than these low mortgage rates.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Did we have a question? Let me see here. I thought maybe there was a question that we had. Let's see here. Uh, why does the price go up while waiting? I'm not sure who sent that. Maybe I can get a little bit more information. Why do prices go up while waiting to like throughout the year? Is but I'm wondering if that's the question. And if so, I'm going to go ahead and answer that unless I get some other information that it's a different question. So why do prices go up throughout, did I say that right? Throughout the year or
Yep,
while waiting?
it's appreciation. It's been what we've been showing throughout
Yeah.
this whole.
And if if you guys have been tuning in, and we'll, for those of you that are on this, we'll make sure that we send you a copy of this. But when we look at what we talked about earlier, supply and demand, well, when we've got inventory down here and the demand is up here, and interest rates very favorably, those are going to keep pushing those prices up, because when we've got 5 people putting an offer on the same house and they're competing, guess what? They're going to pay more than what the house typically, and that's what we're seeing. Typically, they're paying more than what the house is worth. So that just causes the prices of home values to continue to incline, which is going to be again what we're going to see again last year, where we're about 13% here in the Tarrant County. We're going to continue to see that push forward in 2021. Don't see that really having an impact on anything right now. Hopefully that answered your question. If it was something else, please chime in again and we'll make sure we clarify that a little bit more.
Mhm.
All right, so I'm going to switch gears here because one of the things that happened over 2020, once COVID came out, the government tried to open up forbearances, which I'm going to let Matt talk a little bit about that. But one of the biggest concerns that I have, I've had actually some of my buyers say, I'm going to wait to buy a house because I have a feeling that some of these forbearances are going to come into the market as a foreclosure, and we're going to be able to get a really great deal on a foreclosure. We're going to have a lot of foreclosures to choose from because of all these families that are in forbearance. Matt, can you kind of give a little overview on the lending side, what those forbearances were intended for, what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I've got a lot of past clients of mine that have been, wanting to refinance that, got into forbearance as well. So, we hear lots of talks about it, but, in general, forbearance is just a temporary postponement of your mortgage payments. And, in the 2020 scenario, it has allowed relief with the shutdown, people losing their jobs, going on furlough and not bringing in any income. So, the government had to find a way to give everyone relief on their mortgage payments so they do not go into foreclosure.
So it was a really great package that came out to help those that are needing. One of this chart here is going to show you that about almost 6.5 million families were granted a forbearance. Yeah, this is all not just Tarrant County. This is for the whole U.S. economy here. What I found to be interesting is if we see here on the first chart, this orange chart right here, forbearance extended, there was quite a few people that didn't even need the forbearance. So of that 6.5, almost 6.5 million that applied for and were granted the forbearance, they at first said, I'm just going to go ahead and apply for it, get it just in case, right? Which is great. But they didn't even up needing it, so they didn't even use it. I'm going to let you, Matt, can you kind of talk a little bit about more of this, what these things to be removed or paid off and these different ones?
So out of the 6.4 million that were granted forbearance, that first graph in orange there, it shows you that 2.2 million did do forbearance extensions.
Mhm.
And then in the next graph next to that, you got 2.5 that actually removed the forbearance while performing, which means while while they own the mortgage and they're paying on it. These are people that just took it initially because none of us knew what was going to happen, in the springtime with COVID. So, this is just them grabbing that safety net just in case. And then, right next to that, you've got a little over 600,000 people that actually paid off their mortgage this year during the forbearance. So they're like, forget it, I'm just paying my mortgage off. I don't have to worry about it. And then you've got around 500,000 people that are active forbearance, that are on their original forbearance term. So they're still in that initial forbearance. And then you've got 434,000 that are expired delinquent in loss mitigation. So they are getting closer to the point where they are definitely getting into some trouble. This also has to do with every lender is different on how they handle forbearance
Mhm.
and their rules and guidelines. So not every lender is the same. So I recommend if you are in forbearance or want to get more information on forbearance, you need to reach out to your loan servicer directly because they may have specific rules for their company. And then you've got 116,000 that have expired and are now delinquent and that are starting that foreclosure process. But once again, that's nationwide, not in Texas or our area.
So of all of the forbearances that we've had, again, we started with about 6.5 million, almost 6.5. We
Hmm.
have a little bit over 500,000 that are in the red zone. So let's take a look at, let's talk a little bit about what that's going to look like. And those are the ones that, as Matt was saying, are the ones that we need to keep our eyes on, that we perhaps could see enter the market as a foreclosure, perhaps. I want to talk a little bit about why I don't think some of them will, but let's just, if we do have the foreclosures, we might see, I mean, it's just going to happen. We will see some that go into
Hmm.
foreclosure, unfortunately. But this quote here from Lawrence Young, he says, any foreclosure increases will likely be quickly absorbed by the market. It will not lead to any price declines. Again, this is because we've got, um, with having back in 2010, and that's when I got into the business, we did have a lot of foreclosures. And I was one of those people that would snatch them up and make investments out of them. Because there were so many of them that you really could get a good deal. But when we're talking about the low inventory that we've been talking about, and we've got so many people wanting to get a home, those foreclosures, they're not going to be as abundant as they were back in 2008, 2010. We're not going to see that abundance. What we do have is going to have I mean, we're talking about 500,000 homes right now through the whole US. That's just not going to be enough to make an impact on our current market. They're just going to quickly be absorbed. One other thing here I want to talk about, Matt, if you want to go into this, this is more of the equity that people have in their home, and why that is also going to be something that's going to lead to less foreclosures. I'll let you talk about that, Matt.
Yeah, so these are national numbers once again, but the average gain in equity of a home that is mortgaged is around $17,000. And then current average equity of mortgage in a home is 194,000. So, that average is almost 200,000 in equity. That is a lot of equity to walk away from if you are having financial issues. So you're going to sell that home before you just walk away from it and get your money out of it. And then as far as 38.2% of all homes are owned free and clear. So you have a lot of people out there that have just massive amount of equity because they own the home. And then 10.8% increase in equity totaling over $1 trillion as a whole. So there is a lot of money that we have invested in our properties that we are going to fight for, and we are not just going to lay down and walk away and go into foreclosure.
No. And for those, that's exactly what I told my clients that have thought maybe we're going to see more foreclosures hit the market. And when we're looking at, even if they were only in the house for 1 year, we had 13% appreciation.
Yeah.
That's 13% is more appreciation than what it costs to sell a house. So you're still going to walk away with more cash, with at least some cash in your pocket. If unfortunately you or someone or is in this situation and not able to get out of it, I definitely recommend that you contact a real estate professional. Give Matt a call, me a call, or if you've got someone that you know and trust, please reach out to them, because some people just don't even know what kind of equity that they have and how to get out of it, so that you're not just don't throw the towel in on it, is what I would say. But also, why we're not going to see, as another reason that we're not going to see as many foreclosures.
Yeah, and I would like to bring up also, over the last couple years, we've been in a seller's market, but you still have foreclosures, right? Just, life happens to people and they lose their homes, unfortunately. And, as a realtor, Kallie, I'm assuming, if you see a home listed as a foreclosure, you're typically not seeing that home being priced below market
Mhm.
with the demand we have right now.
Absolutely. And that kind
Yeah.
of brings me, we have another question here, that kind of hits on this too. The question is, are you seeing an increased number of investors buying homes in our market? I know often they are paying cash, So Matt might not see them as much, but what are realtors seeing? Do investors coming into the market skew the foreclosure stats because they are reaching out to homeowners in trouble? So I don't know, to be honest with you, if I've seen an increase of investors coming into the market in 2020 as opposed to what we have seen them year after year. I mean, I don't have the exact calculations on which homes were investment and which ones weren't. I just know from my experience in selling homes, I haven't personally felt like there's been a huge increase. They've always been out there, even more so in our super local market, because where our super local market here is in Tarrant County, we've got an increase of desire to have investment homes because of school districts and because for what you get, the value is pretty good for investors, and the rental rates are good. But what investors are doing when they do purchase a home, whether it be a foreclosure or whether it be one on the market, they're paying top dollar. And so even
Mhm.
going above the list price. So
Yep.
I don't see them dragging. They know that if they want this house, they better jump on it and pay the full value for it, because they know they're going to make the money on the front end, which is uh, the cash flow that you're going to get, and then also on the back end from appreciation, because like I mentioned before, we're at 13% plus appreciation, whereas in other areas of the US we're seeing much less. So that's why, at least in this super local market, I don't see them having a big impact on things. And when they do pay cash, because I know that you mentioned something about cash, even if they do pay cash, they're still paying top dollar. Uh, do investors coming into the market skew the foreclosure stats because they are reaching out to homeowners in trouble? Yeah, yes. So what you do see on here, uh, and I've known investors, and I've done this before as well, is they can get a list of what we call a pre-foreclosure list. If you don't know what that is, let me know and I can show you what that is. I used to get it a lot all the time. So basically, you get a list from when lenders put out that somebody's delinquent on their mortgage payment. They go on the list, they file something with the courthouse to go into pre-foreclosures to start the foreclosure process. So then they generate a list. So a lot of investors do get that list, and then they can contact the homeowner directly and have that conversation to help them, smoothly, just make a smooth transact, help them get out of the house, put some more equity in their pocket without having to put the house on the market and without having to go into foreclosure and having that on the record. Do I see that skewing the foreclosure stats? I do think that investors will be continuing to. I don't know that it's going to skew it any more than what it already is. I think people are already doing it, and they're just going to continue to do it.
Yeah, and I would say it's going to happen, but it's so few far in between that it won't impact
Yeah.
the market as far as values go.
As we just looked at that one quote, I think it was from Realtor.com, that said that the foreclosures are just going to be absorbed.
Yep.
Uh, no, either way it goes. So wrapping up with everything that we've talked about, hopefully you guys have learned something. If you've got any more questions through in these last couple of minutes, please put those out there. But just wrapping up, 2020 was a great. I mean, despite being in a pandemic, despite being shut down for, I don't know, I think it was like a month and a half, 2 months, whatever it was, despite the recession, despite the job losses, we continue to see in the housing market a push in real estate. We saw more houses get sold. We saw prices continue to increase. We saw the only two things declining was inventory and interest rates,
Hmm.
all leading to a better year 2020 versus 2019. Going into 2019, we are going to continue to see that same pattern of low interest rates, low inventory, but yes, with them going up a little bit, but not much, not significantly, and yes, still appreciating prices. So still a really great time to, if you're in the market of thinking about buying and selling, do so sooner than later, because as Matt pointed out, there is a cost associated to holding out. Those are my final thoughts. Matt, you got any final thoughts on your end?
Yeah, I would just like to say that I'm really excited about 2021. I think we're very fortunate to live in the area and the state that we do, where we don't tend to be as affected as the rest of the country. And so I think it's going to be a really great year for real estate, for interest rates, for all of us. And we just got to move past 2020 and keep moving forward. So if you are interested in buying a home or want to get more general information on it, I'd love to help you out. Team up with Kallie, and we'll take great care of you.
Great. So I am going to put out, once we send you a copy of this, we'll send you also Matt's information, my information, if you have any questions going forward in the future. The last thing that I want to say is if you are a homeowner and you would like to keep abreast of what's happening with your home value, when I do send out the information to you, respond back to me, because I would like to hook you up with a program that we called HomeBot. And I think every week or every month it sends you a more accurate analysis of your property value compared to that of the Zestimate, or that is free, no cost to you. I'm not going to bug you. We're just going to put you into that program so that you can be kept abreast of what's happening with your home. So everyone, I want to say thank you so much for tuning in to our webinar here on 2021. Look forward to more episodes or more webinars that we're going to continue to do to keep you abreast of what's happening here in the global market and in our local market. So until next time, everyone, stay safe and take care.
Thanks, y'all.